Chris, and good evening, everyone. Let me share the screen. Is it working?
It's working, Michele.
Thank you. Let me see if I can. Reduce this just a second. Okay, I don't know. Okay. So the talk is about conservation. And I have to confess that I mean the subject is extremely vast and complex. So I'm going to necessarily simplify a lot of things. But of course, if you find that certain things are too simple, I'm happy to discuss it after the talk or privately, because I'll be trying to challenge certain things. So, and maybe not everyone could be happy about what I think or what was my opinion. So I'm open and happy to discuss further. But of course, I have a limited amount of time, so I try to keep it simple. And even if it's simple, I hope it's interesting, and I hope it's not boring. So, in my opinion, business as usual in conservation is mostly failing. Of course, there's a lot of initiatives that worked well and did great job and achieved super interesting results. But if we think at a global scale, and we think that all the conservation should have, which is maintaining basically the overall global ecosystem that sustain us all, I think is failing. So I would like to explore during the talk if a substantially different approach to conservation is possible. I will start with a question for you and for myself too, and is somehow the question that has been guiding me through the preparation of this talk. So why we have been reacting relatively quickly and efficiently to coronavirus pandemic, and we don't do the same on climate change and ecosystem destruction that have and will have much worse and long-lasting effects on our society? I think is an intriguing question, because we basically now half of the planet is locked down, and every single country is taking unprecedented measures to try to cope with what is happening. But we have other huge problems. We are facing huge problems. Actually, probably the challenges we are facing today are the biggest ever. And we are actually, in my opinion, not doing very well. And there are, of course, reasons. And I've been trying to understand which are the reasons. I think in general, the problem is twofold: the nature of the problem itself and the nature of who is trying to solve the problem. But there are also reasons to make us thinking that there are unexploited approaches, possibly much more effective than the current ones. Okay, let's try to set the scene. I think this is quite shocking, because basically, since the dawn of civilization, humanity has caused the loss of 83% of all wild animals and half of plants in terms of individuals. Today, poultry makes up to 70% of all birds on the planet. 60% of all mammals on Earth are livestock, mostly cattle and pigs, and 30% are humans. And just 4% are wild animals. Means that since actually our planet, the living part of our planet, is constituted by all the species together and all the relationship with the species. And this is basically what makes our planet functioning. Having removed such a huge amount of species, individuals, means having removed a lot of relationships, a lot of links. And so we are going towards an extreme simplification of what is out there, which maintain us all, the animals, the plants, the quality of air, the soil, and ourselves, including our society and our economy. So I think these numbers alone are quite interesting, and they should, I mean, like a bell should ring that something, I mean, seriously wrong is happening. But let's move into a little bit more the conservation field. From the 70s, the Earth has lost about 60% of its animal. And when I say this, I mean individuals. So now there are 40% of animals around out there than there were in the 70s. In the same time, protected areas have increased of 660%. Means that protected areas, which are super important, are not actually a solution that alone can really make the difference. So what we have been doing and why we have been doing certain things. Okay, one is this, and of course, I cannot go throughout all the measures that as a global society we have been taking in order to try to cope with ecosystem destruction and species extinction. That's just some of them, just to give us an idea and a little bit to set the scene. So I think in 1999, a paper was published in Nature explaining the concept of the biodiversity hotspot, the global biodiversity hotspot. And the assumption, basically the concept behind it was that we are losing too much very quickly, and we don't have enough funding to try to cope with I mean, we don't have enough funding to protect everything that should be protected. So we have to prioritize, which is a little bit the triage we have, at the first day at the hospital. If you have a very serious injury, you are treated immediately. Otherwise, you sit down and wait. So means that again, we should cope. We should consider that we live in a system that should be taken with a systemic approach. And of course, there's a lot of good in this approach, in the approach of the hotspot of biodiversity, because basically the scientists said, we don't have enough money, let's find out which are the places on the planet with a higher diversity, many threatened species, in which if we spend some money, the value of those money is higher, because with the same money, we can save more species, more plants, or species which are facing worse, bad threats. But again, it's like that we are working in specific places. We are not really taking, considering a systemic approach to the problem. At the same time, of course, our society, our production system keep going. And I think we go without thinking where we are heading to, and this is the result. So as you can see here, there are a lot of variables, and there are many more. There are like tropical forest loss, water use, urban population, world population, all these things. And what is actually really worrying is that all these variables show a similar trend. From the beginning of the last century, but even more from the 1950s, everything starts picking up. And all these, and many of these variables are actually going towards their tipping point. And again, we are talking about the only planet where we can live for a very long time. We are not going to live on Mars in 100 or 200 years, in my opinion. And actually, I free my seat on the space shuttle because I would prefer to stay here if it's, within a not too long amount of time. But so basically what is happening, we are compromising, we are putting under extreme pressure a lot of the variables that represent the way that the global ecosystem works. For example, human activities shift 10 times as much material on Earth's surface as all natural geological processes put together. Means that we move more material than all the rivers and glaciers together, 10 times more. So if we have such a power, you have to think where what you are doing will take you eventually. Also because we are sitting on this. I mean, we are sitting on this system. Another thing that we have to consider is that when we think what kind of conservation do we need, is that if we have problems growing exponentially, we need a solution that can grow exponentially. Otherwise, the speed of the problem and the speed of the solution are too different. We will never reach an actual solution at the global scale. Okay, I think you have seen, some of you have seen this also in the last talk. I think is just an attempt to show what is happening. So the image on the left is, in my, of course, in a very simplified way, but in my view, how the planet could look like. So with a lot of relationship of different colors, all interlinked, and with all the points, which are the species, connected throughout this very complex system. And what we are doing is to keep simplifying this system. But so what we are losing now by operating this simplification, which means taking species away, cutting down forests, simplifying habitats and ecosystems, we are cutting relationships. So we are losing diversity, which is, we lose species, and we lose also individuals, because diversity at the individual level is, there's a certain amount of diversity also within individuals, within species, within populations. We lose redundancy, which is a very important concept. So basically redundancy is when in the ecosystem out there, which is naturally very redundant, if a species disappears, the work that that species was doing can be done by another species. I mean, there's more than what is needed. So you can operate a certain, for example, volcanoes or big climatic changes can wipe out a certain number of species, but immediately there are others that can replace those species in terms of the work that they do within the ecosystem. But we are reducing diversity and redundancy in a way that we are reaching a point where the ecosystem basically starts functioning not enough. So we lose complexity, and these losses combined bring to, to a loss of resilience. And resilience is a very interesting concept. Resilience is a very simple concept. Basically, it's the capacity of a system to deal with change. So if a disturbance affects the system, if the system is resilient after the disturbance is gone, it goes back to the original state. But it's also an interesting, from our perspective, it could be a very interesting concept, especially now, because now we are facing a big threat, a big problem, COVID-19, and resilience it could also be about how humans and nature can use shocks and disturbances like financial crisis, virus pandemic, to ignite renewal and innovative thinking into the system. So we can start steering and become more resilient by changing certain rules of the game. So basically, all these to try to describe the magnitude of the problem. We are affecting the system as a whole. So we are like taking away some fundamental bits that maintain all the things properly working. And it's working, of course, for all the species out there, but it's also working for us. So I was thinking that if the product is our future, we are traders, we are not investors. Also, the future is not something we own. we own, because actually the future belongs to the coming generations. So we are trading something that actually don't belong to us. And I found that the list of, I mean, the difference between trading and investing on internet, and I find it extremely interesting, because basically we are for sure not working in order to get benefits from stability. We are not trying to reduce risk. We don't have a growth mindset, and we don't work absolutely long term. So we are traders, and we are trading the future. And I think it's not ethical for sure, but it's not even wise. In fact, I think it's something that only humans can do, because we have this funny thing, in my opinion, a special type of stupidity that only certain organisms that are enough intelligent can have. And I think we are the only one on the planet with that special kind of stupidity. I also think that if we change the why we do certain things, almost automatically we could start moving from being traders and to being investors. I think we could change the why, sooner than when it will be too late. But let's try to go more on the ground. So the way conservation works, and again, I'm oversimplifying. In my experience, of course, there's USAID, European Union, but mostly these big entities give money to NGOs on the ground, organizations of various kinds. Sometimes they also carry out their own projects. But in general, you have people implementing on the ground certain actions, and you have people giving the money to get those actions implemented. I think there's something fundamentally wrong, because what happened is, for example, and actually is what happened to me when I decided to go to Africa. Actually, I was at the beginning driven because I wanted to know more about animals and snakes and frogs and things. And then I started thinking, okay, let's try to give your contribution on conservation, because it doesn't make much sense to study frogs and see them disappearing under your eyes. So I would like that the subject of my study will survive me at least. So what happens is that, so I've been thinking, okay, let's go there. Let's try to do something to protect this area. And I find a donor. The donor gives me some money. I'm Italian, and this could have been happening in Tanzania, for example, or another country. Give me some money. I put together a group. I call it NGO, and I go to local people and I tell them, okay, listen, guys. I mean, we have to protect this because this and this and this. Actually, this local population, usually they're struggling to survive that very day. And so for me also, this become a salary. So the donor pay my salary. Sometimes I could become also quite a remarkably well-known conservationist. So I'm happy of that. And then maybe I succeed in my negotiation with the local authorities, the government, and I get, let's say, a protected area established. During the entire process, what very often happens is that people originally living inside the protected area are displaced outside, or people living around the protected areas, the protected area, they see their land locked into another form. They don't have access to, they have access to much less land, much less resources. Of course, when you have to involve them, but you tell them, listen, I know that it's probably not going to be very nice for you guys, but we build you a school, or you can maybe start, and we help you, activity with tourism, that kind of stuff. Actually, we know, at least for the part of Africa I know, that the benefits are never enough. They are not even close to be enough. And often they last 1, 2, 3 years. Then people are unhappy. And the model creates a constant conflict between local population and expected conservation outcomes. And there's another consideration we should do. How long a protected area should last? So what we are going to do usually is try to protect a landscape, a river, a forest or a woodland, and all the animals. And all these things have been there for many hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions. So we set up the elements to protect this area in a way that we cannot ensure the protection of the area for more than probably a few decades, because, and it's happening, one day the president of that country could say, guys, there's elections, I know that people from abroad put that protected areas in place. We didn't want that, and was the previous government. So I de-gazette the protected area so you can go back to your land. That's why, in my opinion, the only real fence is happy local population, happy local communities around the protected areas. But the model that we are using almost never achieve that. So again, the president should be in a position, when the president say, okay, de-gazette that area because I want votes for the next elections, and guys, I let you go back to your land, they should say, no, we don't. I mean, we want the protected areas in place because we get benefits, because we are happy, because not we understood that is important, because the protected area give us what we need. And we never work that way. We never work that way. And I think, and we have to consider that local communities own the 25% of the global land having, let's say, high value in terms of biodiversity. So one quarter of the planet. And when they don't own that, they are there. And actually, they are the people in the place where conservation should happen, and we never really involve them. Okay, this oversimplified is, I think, quite a few aspects of how things don't work as they could. Okay, let's try to move to what we could do. Not long ago, I read a book, and then I tried to look for other information about the public trust doctrine, which is a wonderful thing. It's there, it exists. Basically, it's a legal principle developed by the Roman Empire, and basically is already in the constitution of a lot of countries. The Constitution of United States of America, UK, quite a few others, European countries, countries in Southeast Asia, in India, because, you know, countries take basic principles from other constitutions when they have been writing up their own constitution. And the public trust doctrine it says that certain resources like air, sea, waters, forests, have such a great importance to the people as a whole that is not justified to make them subject of private ownership. And I'm not, of course, against private property, but I mean, I think we have to distinguish, because if, like now, I'm a super wealthy person, I could actually buy and decide what to do of something, of a huge piece of land that serve to an entire population for living. And that shouldn't be that possible. And in fact, since the Roman Empire, they understood that actually certain things shouldn't be in the hands of a single individual. And so, and this legal principle is already in the law of many, many countries. We just don't use it. We just don't use it. Of course, as always, to get to use something like this, you have to start the process. And I've been thinking, how is the first fundamental step of that process? And I think is to remove corporate money from political campaigns. So every vote should count one. I mean, every vote should count, and corporate money should be removed. Because what we should do is to go towards a situation where things are more fair than now. Also, I think that we have superpowers to make some of these things happening. And let's try to understand which superpowers we have. Okay, usually in the past I've been working at the local scale, both in Europe and in Africa, on how conservation don't work. I mean, in terms of when you discuss with people, with the public, and of course, they say, why should I have to protect a bear, a tiger, or that snail? I mean, I don't care. I have other needs. And I can understand. So usually, first, people don't believe risk messages of scientists. People don't believe their action really matter. People believe changes can be made later. And our habits in general are extremely resistant against change. But we, the same people, have an incredibly efficient capacity to cooperate flexibly and in large numbers. And this is exactly like having a special type of stupidity. This is the other characteristics of human that is only human. So is what distinguishes us from the other animals. A special kind of stupidity and ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers. The reason why we are here, I mean, discussing through a computer screen, is because we have been doing this for a long time in an extremely efficient way. Also, we can generate ideas that change the way we see the future. And when those ideas are very strong, make us and make people thinking that their own action really matter. If you combine this together and you add on top the social and economic incentives, you make almost impossible changes feasible. Okay, so these are our power. These our superpowers. So this is what we should rely on in order to make the change. Okay, let's dream wild. So what happened now is that we have, again, donors, private donors, giving some of their money for conservation, or public institutions, governments, agencies, and this money go into other agencies, NGOs, other organizations, and these organizations try to use this money to do what they think they should do, or sometimes also, I mean, a little bit too much for their own benefit. So not much of those money in certain cases reach the ground. But again, another thing we have to think is listening to a very good NGO that goes to the local community and say, listen, guys, this now is a wildlife corridor, protected areas. You cannot do anymore what you were used to do, but we will try to give you some benefit. But we can build a new school or a new classroom or a dispensary. So we try somehow to give you some benefits. Or if there's tourism going on, we can pay you a concession or we can pay you some money. But this money always go into a pot which is public. This money don't go into the pocket of every single individual who need money to buy food, to buy a motorbike, to take kids at school, or to improve the house, or to pay for healthcare of his kid. They never go there because it's not easy to give money to individuals. So let's go back to our wild dream. Imagine if you have a global funding community. So we are 7.8 billion now, let's say 1 billion, okay, that decide to transfer through a system which is transparent, reliable, non-hackable, with no transaction cost, super reliable, that decide transfer every month little bit of money to an individual that does an action, a specific action, and you pay for that action, okay? Means that 1 billion people on one side, let's say on the richer side of the planet, every month transfer $10 each, okay? But those $10 reach individuals. Maybe a small cluster of individuals on one side pay one individual, and it becomes a job. It becomes enough money to sustain a family. Also because cost of life on this side is much higher than on the other side. So also this helps. And this means also that individuals on both sides become more responsible about what's going on. By doing, they learn what the problems are. And this must be based on milestones. But it's extremely important that it's absolutely peer-to-peer, person-to-person. There's no intermediaries. In the between, there's no NGO. Of course, you need organization, but those are technicalities. They are complex, but they can be handled. Okay, so this could be the wild dream. We have to, to understand where the money comes from. And the money comes from here. Basically, our economy, the GDP of the country, and subsequently, the money that I put into my pocket through my job are linked to financial capital, manufactured capital, social and human capital, which collectively are built on top of natural capital. Natural capital is like the bank account of the humanity, and is a capital. So what we should use is the interest. So preserve the capital, use the interest, which we can call, and I'm simplifying, ecosystem services. So having air, minerals, soil, water, materials, coltan, gold, everything we need to feed our production system, okay? And to build up the GDP of the countries. So we all take from natural capital, but myself in Italy, I take much more than a farmer living in southern Tanzania, way more. And I know that my lifestyle is based on the natural capital. If the natural capital is used wisely and it stays there, my lifestyle is saved. But if the way we use the natural capital destroyed, depleted, basically the natural capital is shrinking. And eventually what we get from the natural capital will shrink down. So I could think, okay, I get, let's say, 30,000 euros a month, a year. And so that's my annual wealth. I can decide to transfer 0.01 to a person who can implement an action that help restoring and maintaining the natural capital. So at the same time, I invest a tiny fraction of what I get for maintaining the system that gives me my lifestyle. On the long run, we all need this. Donors pay for services they really need to maintain their lifestyle. Implementers on the other ground, they improve their livelihood because they get basically money from abroad and provide the service. So it's a win-win option. And I did a little exercise, and sorry for all this writing, but it's actually. So I went and checked finance of 2019, the world wealth. So basically 30% of the people of the planet fell within the wealth range from 10,000 to over 1 million. And of course, there's also this amount of people includes the famous 1% that alone accounts for 46% of global wealth. Means that 2.3 billion people have somehow in their availability about 272 trillion, which I don't know what it is, but is money. So let's suppose that each one of them makes annually available at the individual level 0.01 of their wealth. Means that if you have 1 million, you contribute with $10,000. If you have $25,000, you contribute with $250. So according to what you can, and it's not compulsory. Everyone decide to do it, and it should become something that you really like to do it because it makes you feel is good. When you feel sad and you go out and you buy, if you're a woman, a pair of shoes, and that's make you feeling better. So you buy a share of the future of your kids, or you buy a share of the future of your business by paying someone able to restore the system that maintain your lifestyle. Going back to numbers, that amount of money means that you can pay $13,000 to 200 million people every month. So this is the perfect win-win option. This is a lot of jobs which don't exist today. And if the system is based on milestone, you can monitor the results. Means that milestone achieved, money transferred. Milestone non achieved, money sit there till the milestone is achieved. Of course, need organization, but it's possible. So it would be, and on the right, you see the previous model. It would be in a system in which you don't have the local community on a side, but local community are just implementing community. They are exactly in the right place at the right time. They can do it. We have to empower them. We take our responsibility to maintain the system that gives us our lifestyle. And by doing this, we give them a better livelihood. By the way, reducing inequality and improving the livelihood of the local communities is by itself a way to improve conservation, because a lot of problems are linked to the fact that they rely a lot on natural resources without efficiency in using them, okay? So conservation should become a smarter form of globalization, able to unlock a power of decentralized network of connected individuals and economies. Tools and technology to implement this exist already, is there. We, of course, have to change a little bit our mindset. But again, we can rely on our incredible capacity of cooperate flexibly and in large numbers. But we have to take control of our future. Thanks.